Welcome to episode 222 of the Microsoft Cloud IT Pro podcast, recorded live on March 22nd, 2021. This is a show about Microsoft 365 and Azure from the perspective of IT pros and end users, where we discuss a topic or recent news and how it relates to you. In this episode, we talk about Azure AD getting glitterbombed. Okay, so really we talk about the latest Glitterbomb to catch Amazon scammers, Teleprompter's Word and Teams, and then unfortunately we do have to wrap things up with chatting about the recent Azure AD outage. I had so much insightful stuff I was going to start with, and it's all gone now. Because you told me the website broke.
I'd like to get your web dev on early in the morning and mess with Cloudflare caches and whatever else is in front of you.
Whatever else is there protecting all the things that hackers want to get in and steal. Yes. Because we have so much valuable stuff on our website, Scott.
Well, I mean, you have podcast episodes and the posts with the embedded media that lets you get to them. Like that's valuable stuff, right?
Yeah. Speaking of valuable stuff, did you see Glitterbomb trap catches phone scammer? Did you watch that video I sent you last night or yesterday?
I did, but I got turned off from the Glitterbomb videos because the very first one he did was a fake one. Like it wasn't real people stealing packages off his porch. It was all
really
with his friends. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yep. So I don't know what happened with later Glitterbomb videos, but in the original one, yeah, I forget what it was. I don't know if it was because he was scared of actually like glitterbombing people and recording them in their homes and putting it out on the internet or anything like that. But yeah, I watch all the other Glitterbomb guys' videos, but not the Glitterbomb videos. What's his name? Former NASA scientist.
Yes. I'm looking up Mark. I think it's Rober. I don't think it's Robert. It's Rober. I would say it Rober.
Yep, Mark Rober. There you go. Anyway, for those who are interested, we will put the Glitterbomb trap catches phone scammer who gets arrested video in the show notes. Where can people find the show notes, Ben?
We're msclouditpro.com/episode 222. Well, wow. I don't know if that redirect works. msclouditpropodcast.com/episode 222 will work. I think the short one works too.
I like it when you're proper about things.
Either way, go to our website. One of those two URLs will get you there. And then it's episode 222. But yes, I cannot vouch for the validity of this. If he really did do it, it's fascinating. He actually teamed up with somebody else on it that, and I guess because 99.9% of what you read on the internet is all true. He teamed up with another guy who reverse engineers scammers and like takes over control of their computers over in India and messes with them and all that. I can't remember the name of the guy he teamed up with. Jim Browning. I don't know if you've ever watched any of Jim Browning's videos.
I have not, or at least it doesn't come to mind.
So either way, they're rather fascinating to me, assuming again that they are all legitimate, not like you said, a fake one from like his first one, in terms of different phone scamming techniques that these scammers use and different ways that these guys try to catch them. And this one happened to deal with Amazon packages and glitter bombs as well.
Yeah, I'm really waiting for one of the phone scammers to call me and go, this is Microsoft support trying to help you with your computer. I go, oh, really? I know some things about Microsoft support. Tell me more.
Yes, I do not get those very often. I got one. I messed with them for a little bit, but then I got bored. But I had to make up. I was trying to make up. Apparently, I failed in sending you how to use Word and Teams for a teleprompter.
I wouldn't say you failed. It was just
Was it a step in the right direction after I wasted 6 minutes of your life?
Yeah, no, I'm all for at-home productivity and things like that. And certainly I am somebody who, and you're in the same boat. I'm going to chunk you in here with me and probably thousands and thousands of other people who have spent way too much money and way too much time fretting about which microphone to have, which audio interface to have, which teleprompter to have, which camera to have, all so that you can have this, just beautiful at-home setup for doing all our virtual meetings. And what is his name? Jeremy Chapman.
Jeremy Chapman. Yes.
Yeah. From Microsoft Mechanics, put out a nice video. It's about 6 minutes long, about how he uses Word and Teams and a teleprompter to go ahead and put his videos together, which I thought was a little funny. Like parts of it, like I'm all about the productivity thing and geeking out around it. I just feel like it's such a forcing function to say you're going to use Teams as your broadcast application for trying to figure out how you're going to get your teleprompter text onto your monitor on your teleprompter. There's probably about a million other ways to do that don't involve all that like weird rigmarole and stuff that went with it.
Yeah, it was... I get what he was trying to do. The part for me that was a little odd was he was essentially use Teams and Word for your teleprompter. By the way, here's everything else I'm using with Teams and Word. A Sony, I think he had the Sony A7, an actual teleprompter, an actual teleprompter, all of this. And it's like, well, yeah, Teams and Word are actually the small part of that. The big part is the teleprompter and all that. And he had some other hints on ways you could do it with like a phone. And to your point, using a phone and then using Teams as the broadcaster and spinning up 2 Teams meetings if you were co-presenting with somebody and you both wanted the same teleprompter scrolling. And to your point, I get that he's trying to show people different things you can do, get people's wheels spinning, but some of it just seemed a little wonky to me.
Yeah. If you're interested in learning how to go down the path of using a teleprompter better, like you have the camera, you have all the things you've been interested in getting a teleprompter, and maybe you already have like maybe an old Surface tablet or an old Android tablet or an iPad or something laying around, or maybe you even happen to have like an HDMI monitor from the days that you were a aspiring photographer, like whatever it is, go out on YouTube and watch a ton of other videos about how to get started with that stuff, and don't go down a rabbit hole of using Teams and Word as your teleprompter software.
Yeah. For me, I'd rather just go spend $5. There's lots of teleprompter apps out there. Granted, I'm on a Mac. I'm sure they're out there for Windows as well that are relatively inexpensive or free. That in my mind just makes it a lot easier.
Yes. Yeah. You won't fight things so much. Like I think one of the things in there, and I was kind of chuckling as it came up, was using a Surface dial to scroll through Word, so you could automatically scroll your or manually scroll, not automatically, manually scroll your teleprompter text along the way. Like if you invest $5 in an app, like you said, there are teleprompter applications that will use the active microphone on your device and automatically scroll for you. Like little things like that can just save you a ton of time and make it so much easier to interact with those kinds of things.
Yep, I agree. So those were my 2 random tidbits of video. I feel like there was something else I was going to say, or something you had that you were saving for the recording, but I can't remember anymore.
No. I wasn't saving anything, but I was waiting to transition from glitterbombing phone scammers to Azure AD getting glitterbombed and going out again. And you happen to put teleprompters in the middle.
That was quite a segue. Yes, Azure AD did indeed go down again. And it was not pretty.
So what happened this time?
People did bad things.
People did bad things. Oh,
no,
okay,
technically it wasn't. Did you like that? I lost my... Oh, did I really close that screen? Just a minute. Please bear with me while I find my correct tab that has my root, cause, and mitigation. So we'll put this link in the show notes as well. status.azure.com/status/history if you actually want to go type it out. But there was some keys that Azure AD utilizes to support the use of OpenID and some other identity standard protocols, cryptographic signing operations, all of that good stuff. So there are metadata about these keys that are also published to a global location. Here's the first problem with this. It is a global location, which means it is not data center specific. It is one location everywhere. There was a long-running migration. I'm assuming, I don't know if it was an internal migration or a large customer that was doing a migration, but these keys are usually cycled out automatically. On some type of, they have some type of timer, some type of regular job that runs, cycles through keys, changes them. Well, this particular key, they put some metadata on it that said to retain it due to this long-running migration that should have prevented this key from getting deleted in their timed automatic cleanup. Well, lo and behold, their metadata and their automated process did not work. And retain did not mean retain. Retain meant go ahead and delete it anyways. When this key was deleted at approximately sometime 1900 UTC on March 15. I don't know, time zone were -5. So what, 2 p.m.?
Yep.
No, 4 p.m. 19 minus 14. No, it is 2 p.m. Yeah. 2 p.m. That key was deleted.
That military time thing.
Yeah, the military time thing is confusing when you were never in the military. Everything started to crumble when this key got deleted and nothing could authenticate to Azure AD anywhere in the world.
No, that's
that is the gist of it. I mean, we could dive into some details here because this is interesting, with all Azure AD outages.
So I think there's a couple things to kind of dive into and potentially peel apart, and I'm interested to get your take on it because you're dealing with customers out in the real world, right? So when Azure AD goes down and Teams is down and it's acting weird, I have a little bit of a chuckle and I go, oh no, we've got to do some of our meetings on Zoom now or WebEx or whatever some of us have going in the background. But it's not in many cases like the end of the world for me in my role anymore. If that goes away. So being that this seems to happen and happen with, not a regular frequency, but it is happening with kind of a decent frequency. We had a big event in September and now this one here in March. Those aren't too far apart. What are some things that folks should be thinking about, particularly maybe when it comes to business continuity and disaster recovery? Like if Azure AD is down, are there other systems that I might want to think about having in place? Or like what's the backup for me there? Like I recognize I might not be able to get into the portal, but can I enable myself to get into other tools or things like that along the way?
So as I was dealing with this, especially because it did go down during work hours in the US here, I was sitting here, and this is my biggest struggle with Azure AD, and there's some articles out there we could point to as well, is legitimately, what do you do? Because Azure AD is that authentication point for everything. So I was talking to customers. I was working with customers. Experiences were a little mixed. But in some cases, when Azure AD is gone, people are like, I'm still authenticated. As long as I don't sign out and sign back in, I could get in.
In some cases, that
this
will
one
help you,
seemed to be a little bit worse than that. In that, I talked to some clients that they were clicking around in Teams, and there was some authentication going on in the background every time they switched a tab in Teams or switched to a different team in Teams. And I experienced some of it too, where I could stay where I was, but as soon as I tried to go anywhere else and it tried to reach out to Azure AD to authenticate me, everything just fell apart and then it started crumpling. So I was sitting here, it's like, what do you do in that case? If all my files are in SharePoint, if all my conversations are happening in Teams, email is all in Exchange, it's not like I can have or even authentication for third-party apps. Let's go a little bit further. I started hearing from people that automations that they had hooked up to Zapier were starting to fail. Automations that people had configured in Flow obviously were failed, but it was more than just first party. It was a lot of third party stuff that was also tied into Azure AD that was having issues. And how do you go in and prepare for an outage of your identity provider when you as a customer are unable to stand up any sort of redundancy? So if you start looking at things like servers, at websites, at a lot of those other services, there are complementary services that technically, if you really cared about high availability and business continuity, you could have a website somehow replicated or a cold standby sitting out in AWS, or you could have some of your other processes sitting other places to accommodate for something like VMs going down in Azure, or to accommodate a region going offline, or different failures. It's a lot easier to create some type of failover for. But there is no way to create something to fail over for when none of your systems can authenticate. Because even if you have some of them set up with SSO, I mean, help desk software, people have that set up with Azure AD for SSO. Like, how do you go in and create some type of backup plan for that? And frankly, I don't know that I have a good answer. You could keep business critical files somewhere else, whether it's in a Dropbox or a Google Drive, so that you could access them. Kind of like you said, meetings, maybe you have a small Zoom subscription that you can use to at least create like an emergency call for the business on what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? Have some other ways to communicate with each other. Maybe you do have something like Google Chat or AOL Instant Messenger, because I don't know, that one got shut down. Have some other chat service that you could have conversations on. But when Azure AD goes down, that is a hard one to come up with a good business continuity plan for, in my opinion.
I think it's tough. You have to maybe decide on what are some of those business critical systems that you might want to actually have an alternative form of SSO to. So there's Azure AD outage, and they come in various forms, right? There's in this case, Azure AD isn't able to read token signatures properly because of failures in that trust chain. Or it could be in some cases like Azure AD isn't actually able to issue me a token at all. And then there's maybe lighter outages where things like the public login.microsoft.online site stays up, and it can do that redirect for you over to your identity provider of choice, whether that was ADFS or Okta, Ping Federate, whatever it happened to be.
Yep.
In the past, I think my inclination has been to say, like, those things are really hard to set up and maintain. Like if you don't know anything about federated authentication, like you shouldn't just be going out and standing up an ADFS server. But maybe it is worth like seeing like, hey, what does like a low scale Okta subscription take me to run maybe for just like my SREs or my core operations, something like that, to authenticate back to some of our other critical systems. Like, does that make sense? Like, do I want to give people the opportunity to authenticate to my custom application through Azure AD and through some other form of token service, some other STS along the way? Like maybe it is time to think about those kinds of things and weigh them out. I also love the idea, like you said, of having a backup along the way. So what is your backup plan for chat? And what is your backup plan for any type of voice-based call along the way? Like, you might not need to have an active paid subscription for Zoom, but it's worth knowing ahead of time that, hey, I've got these 3 or 4 folks with free subscriptions, and we all get whatever it is, your 40-minute call or whatever it is, and rotate through those kinds of things. But I think that's like the stark reality is now as outages become more prevalent, and you can't just go into the office and talk to each other because that one's been taken away from you. Alternative plans need to be there and be in place. And by the same token, you're kind of relying on Microsoft to continue to improve the service along the way. And there have been announcements there, right? Like the whole 4 nines of availability for SLA for Azure AD premium subscribers. Like that is still scheduled to hit and land on April 1st. At various points along the way, as these failures in the identity system have manifested themselves, like whether it was a lightning strike back in 2018, it was the SDP thing back in September, even up to now till the March event. There's always been chatter of maybe like an Azure AD backup authentication system coming along the way. Like, who knows? Maybe that's something that comes up someday and makes everybody's life a little bit easier as well.
Right. I think that's some of what you would need to actually solve this is some type of identity backup. Going to that point of this was, and I don't know all the details of how this stored, but this was a single global key that was deleted. Like, why is there not a backup where it's like, oh shoot, we deleted this key from this location, let's quick fail over so the key still exists? And I don't know all the details of how it worked because they did end up having to roll back and restore that key. And then it took like 16 hours for all these various systems to recognize that this key was back.
Yeah, you're waiting for all those like folded caches to catch up with things.
Right. But yet it goes down instantaneously for everybody. It goes down instantaneously, but it takes that long for all these caches to pick up that it's still there or back there. And without being on the engineering side of it, but I feel like it goes back to there was a single point of failure there. And of all the services in Azure, this one should be the one that has absolutely 0 single points of failure. And the other thing I thought of is, why was this metadata thing? I mean, if I'm going to create metadata in an automated process that's going to delete something or not delete something, I'm going to test it because I don't want stuff to accidentally get deleted because it ignored the metadata.
Yeah, I think some of that comes back to that safe deployment process and SDP, like that whole system. So,
and that's in process, right? They started that back in September with the last outage, and they're working through that yet.
Integrating more components of Azure AD into SDP, is that overall goal, right? And all this is kind of spelled out publicly in the RCAs that have been released. So after the September event, and that was around improving and integrating Azure AD into SDP for the addition of new keys. But that didn't include the key removal component. So when you said, like, I don't understand when they take a key out, how it affects everything all at once, because it wasn't part of that ringed deployment process. Like remove key component was it's work in progress for SDP, and it just hasn't been done along the way yet. So it's coming, right? And it's all part of that process to get everything to where it does need to be. So theoretically, once all these components, both key additions and key removals, are integrated into SDP, that entire risk component or risk classification would be contained within SDP and covered by it. And it makes it so these classes of failures that are caused by these specific things can't happen in the future. Now, that's not to say that maybe there isn't some other class of thing that somebody hasn't thought about yet that's not yet integrated into SDP. But I think that's the overall goal, is get every additional protection that you can in place for Azure AD and other services, because there's a bunch of other services that are kind of critical in this pipeline as well.
Yep.
But get them all into that safe deployment process system, and all up just prevent these types of issues from happening in the future.
I wonder if that's scheduled.
But you've got to do all that dev work, right, to get that stuff integrated.
Right. I wonder if that's scheduled to be complete close to April, when that 5.9s is supposed to hit instead of 4.9s. I don't know. Because that's the other thing with this, right? So if I'm on Azure AD Premium, how was 5.9s going to help with this versus 4.9s? I'd maybe just get more of a refund from Microsoft.
Other way, 3.9s to 4.9s.
Or 3.9s to 4.9s, sorry. I mean, maybe I get a bigger,
nice, but it's
5.9s would be nice. Maybe I get a bigger refund, but when you have these like this, where it's a single point of failure, Azure AD Premium isn't going to solve my 3.9s versus 4.9s. In this particular scenario, it was going to go down whether I had Azure AD Premium or not, and it was going to be down for 16 hours, unless they prioritize traffic. Maybe because as this comes up, it's rolling across all of Azure. I don't know if maybe they have a tiered restore where they start then having a little bit of a higher priority tier in terms of that recoverability if you have premium, so that as all that cache stuff gets refreshed, it gets refreshed for premium AD subscribers first before standard. Guess there's a few ways they could kind of slice that up to improve it.
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing how that one actually manifests itself, because Azure AD entitlements are still per user entitlements. So there's really not so much of a thing as an Azure Active Directory premium Azure Active Directory, right? It's users and sub-users within that directory. It might be all your users, like or
right, but they know your user, they know your UPN. They could direct you to a certain server for authentication based on your UPN and your entitlement. Or a certain subset of servers.
Got to see how that one works at scale. But I'm interested to see, like I said, where that one goes, and what that SLA formally looks like when it does release on April 1st, which isn't that far away.
But to Microsoft's credit, I mean, yes, it was miserable being down for 16 hours, having all of this fail. I still tip my hat to Microsoft, because there is no way you would ever get me to want to be responsible for Azure AD in the massive scale that they do handle, and thinking about all these things. Because most of these outages are, we say they should have tested deleting a key. Azure AD is not just two servers in a single process. There's a lot of moving parts there. So I also don't want to come across too critical, because frankly, this is something I would never want to manage myself or be in the middle of. It's easy for me on the outside to look at them and say, well, they should have done this differently. But personally, I'm not prepared for like a lightning strike on my house. I would be in a lot worse shape than Microsoft if lightning hit my house versus like lightning hitting their data center. Or I have had processes delete stuff that shouldn't be deleted. So they are learning. They publish everything that's going on as far as we can tell. And it also goes back to, there is still some of this onus that goes on you as the owner of your data in your business. And I also tied in an article that our friends over at Build 59s wrote. Dan Patrick wrote one, and he does an analogy. He was actually in a boating accident earlier this year, and this is all on this blog post too, so we'll link to it in the show notes. And he talks about how his planning actually saved his life and saved others' lives in this boating accident, and comparing that to your business. And it goes back to what you and I were talking about too, Scott, with planning, in that you as a business can't always put all the ownership on Microsoft as saying, you know what, I'm paying Microsoft and they're going to keep my business running. No, it's still your business. You still have to have those plans. Like we said, what are we going to do if this happens? What are we going to do in this scenario or that scenario? There is still some ownership that goes on you as the business owner to put those business continuity plans in place for your organization, because stuff happens. Stuff goes down, and you as a business need to know how you're going to handle it and what you're going to do about it. So that was a good article by him too, and a good reminder that you as a business owner still have a responsibility in all of this as well, to have a plan for your business.
Yes, sir. I think one other thing, you mentioned kind of communications along the way and what that looks like. This has always been a haphazard thing for Azure AD outages. I think particularly for maybe Microsoft 365 customers who don't think of themselves as Azure subscribers. They think, well, I have Microsoft 365, not Azure, so why would I ever need to pay attention to Azure status? Well, you need to pay attention to Azure status because that's where Azure AD status is, which makes it kind of important. Anywho, like there is an effort, and everybody kind of sees the writing on the wall that there are certainly identifiable differences between Azure AD service outages and how those are maybe communicated through something like Azure Service Health and resource health within inside of Azure itself, all the way down to services that rely on Azure AD as an authentication provider and an identity provider. So that could be like Microsoft 365, could be Dynamics 365, subcomponents of Microsoft 365, like Teams, all those kinds of things. Generally speaking, there's a lot of confusion when these events do occur. Like you see people on Twitter and Reddit and random place on the internet, like everybody's going wild and saying like, oh, the sky is falling. What's going on? Like we're not getting updates in the right way. I think if you're a customer and you have found that communication is deficient or lacking, or it's just missing some critical thing for you, the identity team does have a survey out there. So you can go to aka.ms/Azure PIR survey. And I'll put a link for this in the show notes as well. This is an Azure incident communication survey. It should take you about a minute to complete, but just let the team at Microsoft know how you're looking to receive these communications. And, is that Twitter, SMS, email, the Azure portal, status.azure.com? Is it Microsoft 365 status dashboards? Like wherever that is, let them know what the most important ones to you are. And then if you have suggestions about things that can improve that process, this is an opportunity to have your voice be heard. So, you might take that and use it as a little bit of a cathartic experience to get it all out.
Yes. And when these do happen, to your point too about Azure, the couple websites that I actually watch for these two, status.office.com has a certain amount of Office 365 stuff. Status.azure.com has a bunch of Azure stuff. And then I also follow MSFT 365 status on Twitter. They're really good about pumping out updates, particularly for Office. My only gripe is that they often tell you to go check your status dashboard in Office 365.
They do.
If whoever owns that Twitter handle is listening, just an FYI, when Azure AD goes down, you can't get to that. So don't keep sending tweets to go look at our status dashboard in Office 365 because we can't get to it when Azure's down. Okay, I got that off my chest. I feel better. But those are my 3 primary resources. Again, as soon as Office 365 goes down, I'm checking status.azure.com just as quick as I'm checking status.office.com because those are so closely tied together. And thanks for that survey. I'm going to go fill that out because I've got some gripes, if you couldn't tell.
I think everyone should do that. There actually is an RSS feed that you can subscribe to for Azure Status as well. So if you're not into doing the go check a website thing, you can subscribe to the RSS feed and maybe like catch that in your RSS reader of choice or your automation thing. Like even old school Office apps like Outlook still have integrations for RSS. So there's lots of ways to consume that information. And maybe this is another opportunity to take a step back and think about not only like what's your backup plan for communications when these kinds of things happen, but is there a better way or a more consistent way for you to ingest those status updates across your teams as they are coming out? I'd encourage everyone to look at that as well.
Yep, definitely. All right. Well, thanks, Scott. Another Azure AD outage episode. I hope we don't ever have to do another one of these.
I'm right there with you.
All right. Well, go enjoy your week, Scott. We actually recorded this on Monday. So yeah, Tuesday, whatever day it is.
It's a day of the week.
Yes, it is a day of the week. And we will talk to you later this week.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Ben.
Thanks, Scott.